Huge story just came out. It went viral. This alleged Pfizer executive who thought he was on a date. Unfortunately for him and for Pfizer, he was on a date with an undercover Project Veritas journalist. And he got a bit too comfortable with him and decided to brag a bit about what they were doing behind the scenes at Pfizer.
You know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we could preemptively develop new vaccines, right? If we're going to do that, though, there's a risk. As you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses. Be like very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't create something that goes everywhere.
He later got confronted, by the way, about that, and that's what he was saying. He was like, oh my god, I was lying. I was just trying to impress my date.
Is this real life? I'm literally a liar.
But he said what he said, and now it's gone viral. I'll admit, when I first saw that video without understanding the context, and before conducting my own little investigation that I'll show you very soon, I thought that it might be fake. I thought that it might be some actor playing off as a Pfizer employee pretending to reveal their secrets just to make conspiracy theorists go crazy. But after some investigation, I realized that it's actually true. This guy does work for Pfizer, even though now he's obviously fired. It doesn't confirm that everything he says is true, but he seemed pretty honest to me.
You're not supposed to do gain-of-function research with the viruses, they recommend not. But you do these selected directional mutations to try to see if you can make more potent.
Yeah.
So there is research ongoing about that. I don't know how that's going to work. There might not be any more outbreaks, because Jesus Christ. It's a revolving door for all government officials. It's pretty good for the industry, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's bad for everyone else in America.
Why is it bad for everybody else?
Because if the regulators who have to approve our drugs know that once they stop being regulated, they want to come work for the company, they're not going to be as hard for the company. They're doing their job.
Now, you're about to witness what I assume to be Pfizer covering their tracks with an ongoing attempt to erase this man off the face of the internet, live, as I'm video recording this because we all know screenshots can be photoshopped. You're getting it live as I was navigating the Google search, refreshing links, and seeing how they were deleting and modifying things in real time. Now, let's start by looking at who is this guy. His name is Jordon Walker, Pfizer Director of Research and Development, Strategic Operations, mRNA Scientific Planner. Now, how do we know this is true? Before I show you the remaining traces of him that prove he works for Pfizer, I'll show you the proof that they're actually trying to scrub him off the internet. Now, Jordon wrote an article on a Boston Consulting Group's website, which is a company that offers services of biopharma growth strategy. In other words, an entire division focusing on how to make people take more drugs. Think about that. Well, it looks like Pfizer might have hired Jordon from Boston Consulting Group for their own growth strategy. Now, he wrote an article there about the near-term outlook for COVID-19 therapeutic treatments. And before you say, well, where's his picture? How do we know it's the same Jordon Walker? You scroll down here and you see his lovely face. And you'll see in that video, it's exactly this guy. If you click on his LinkedIn profile, oops. Doesn't exist anymore. Before that story broke out, though, it existed. And the actual first link on the Google search is the same thing. We have a profile here that actually shows his position at Pfizer here. View Jordon Walker's business profile as Director, Worldwide R&D Strategic Operations and mRNA Scientific Planning at Pfizer. Now, if you click on there, a legit website, and it's deleted. Oh, and notice how at the top of the Google search, there's a little disclaimer where it says it looks like the results below are changing quickly. If this topic is new, it can sometimes take time for reliable sources to publish information. Check the source. Are they trusted on this topic? Come back later. Other sources might have more information on this topic in a few hours or days. Does this mean that there were never any search results for this guy? That he just didn't exist before? Or does this mean that they're scrambling to erase or edit every trace of him on the internet? I bet they're in meetings right now just figuring out how we're going to fix this, how we're going to patch this, how we're going to spin this story or explain this away. Now, they haven't managed to delete everything just yet. Here at Signal Hire, which provides real-time, verified contact info for recruiters, sales professionals, and marketers, you've got Jordon Walker's profile. Now, as you can see, Jordon Walker's current position, Director, Worldwide R&D Strategic Operations and mRNA Scientific Planning at Pfizer. Here, it's on video, name Pfizer, industry, pharma. And here it reads that he worked for Pfizer for 579 days. His email address is wxx@pfizer.com. 2 hours later. Now, would you look at that? I just refreshed his signalhire.com profile, and you can check here. It's the same URL. Go zoom in on the previous recording if you want proof. And that's an error. It doesn't exist anymore. And no, this isn't a profile that he could have quickly put in there or removed himself without filling out some form. It's a verified database. And just so you understand the extent of how much you can't just trust what the mainstream media says, okay? You got Forbes here, pretty reputable website. It says, Well, a Google search didn't really reveal any legitimate source that could verify the person's name and title. Well, duh, because they deleted it. So I'm actually recording this as I'm editing, and Pfizer did respond to the allegations, and they don't mention the guy, they don't mention the story, they only say, we are not guilty of any of this. Alright, well I guess we're just gonna ignore your history of lying, of manipulation, of corruption. I mean, they're only guilty of the largest healthcare fraud settlement in the history of the Department of Justice. No big deal. Oh, and did you know that Pfizer tried to have their mRNA vaccine data hidden for 75 years? I mean, nowadays with cancel culture, we cancel people out of silly things, inconsequential things, or something they said when they were 19 years old and stupid. But we're not going to cancel them when they're being huge frauds in the sector of public health? I feel like trying to continually make excuses for these companies and how they lie and how they have obvious vested interests. I mean, look at this photo. You see how James C. Smith is the CEO of Reuters in charge of informing people about the COVID-19 vaccines, and he's also a current member of the board of directors of Pfizer. And you have former FDA commissioners that were previously in charge of regulating Pfizer and Moderna. And now they are working with Pfizer and Moderna. And of course, Fauci. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole here. If you look at history, I mean, we're making movies about this sort of stuff. Here's one of them.
Purdue Pharma, they've been marketing the drug as something that's non-addictive, when it clearly is.
It could soon become Purdue's first billion-dollar drug.
You will be the largest sales force in pharmaceutical history. Make your doctors feel special. Take them to expensive dinners. Bribe the receptionist with a mani-pedi. Whatever it takes to win their trust. Your most effective talking point are these magic words.
Less than 1% of people get addicted to Oxycontin.
He continues to lie about the drug's safety to doctors, to patients, and the FDA. We have a major case here.
In retrospect, we can look at certain big pharma scandals, governmental scandals, reenact them in a movie using our favorite Hollywood actors, and we're like, oh my god, this is terrible. Well, guess what? Back then, there were whistleblowers trying to warn us, yet they were the crazy ones. They were the conspiracy theorists. What if this is history in the making right now? Are we going to learn from history? Are we going to maintain a healthy distrust of authority? Are we going to think for ourselves? Are we going to look at all sides of the story before waiting for Reuters to fact check it for us? And not to mention all the doctors and experts who are raising some really valid concerns based on sound data, but they're being ridiculed or just completely ignored.
What I have witnessed is doctors who are in no way fringe, highly decorated, fully qualified doctors attempting to raise the alarm of their colleagues and being demonized and stigmatized and marginalized.
It's not popular to tell the truth in healthcare. You will get a lot of enemies because a lot of people make money on false premises, doctors and industry alike.
The science alone is not sufficient. Opposition from vested interests need to be overcome. Let me give you one example. Big tobacco. It took 50 years between the first links between smoking and lung cancer before any effective regulation was introduced to curb tobacco consumption, because big tobacco adopted what I call a corporate playbook of dirty tricks, of denial, planting doubt, confusing the public, and even buying the loyalty of scientists. One of my inspirations is Simon Chapman in Australia, who was considered probably the most influential man in Australia in taking on the tobacco industry and getting the consumption of tobacco down. And he wrote a paper about his 38-year lessons in public health advocacy. And one of his lessons is this. He says, unless you are an advocate for a totally uncontroversial policy, as soon as your work threatens an industry or an ideological cabal, you will be attacked, sometimes unrelentingly and viciously.
Now, I know the world has been very divided with everything that touches the subject of COVID-19, vaccines, and I do think that there are extremes in both sides of the equation. But when it comes to how the mainstream media has portrayed anyone who challenges or questions the mainstream narrative as crazy conspiracy theorists, extremists,
qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi, c'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là?
This divisive narrative is just unacceptable at this point. And the science about the vaccines doesn't even support it. Truth survives open debate, not censorship, ridicule, divisiveness. You actually look a lot more suspicious if you're not willing to have a debate, if you're not willing to sit across a table with someone who disagrees with you. You know, again, if you look at history, specifically dictatorships, they relied on the control of public opinion through the control of information. They also relied on divisive tactics, pitting people against each other. And so I hope that this video can remind us not only to learn from history and think critically, but to resist division tactics and remain united as a human family.